Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com. So I saw this on Twitter. So I don't know who wrote this. I think there's a name for this. And it's called Flood the Country with Immigrants, Go After Citizens That Complain About It, Instigate Riots Between Citizens and Immigrants. This all happened. Mm-hmm. Implement police state complete with surveillance and facial recognition cameras everywhere. Problem, reaction, solution. So but first of all, I don't know if this slide is racist or a conspiracy theory or a racist conspiracy theory, but I do know whoever wrote this loves Russia and hates women.
Yes. Thank you for saying it. I was about to say it if you didn't.
This sounds like the Great Replacement Theory. You know, that nonsense term that morons and liars use?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
The same liars and morons who used to say demographics are destiny.
Which is infinitely more racist, I would like to point out.
That's right.
It's the same fucking thing, too. I mean, that's hilarious.
So here's Keir Starmer. So he's the prime minister right now of the UK, correct?
Yeah, not much longer.
A perfectly square head. That's what I like about him. He looks like Bert. Well, Bert's more of a cone head.
When I was a kid, they would say that's a punchable face. That's what they would say.
Yeah, it's so good.
Him and
blockhead.
The only one,
blockhead.
Not even Michael Rappaport has a more punchable. Well,
he doesn't.
At least not if you're wearing protective gloves. I'm not saying anybody should punch anybody. I'm just saying when I was a kid, that's what we would say about that face. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, go punch rectangle head. Is that the kind of things you would say in your school?
So this guy, Geiger Capital, says, holy S. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer just admitted that Western leaders have been running an open borders experiment. You want to see him admit it? Watch this. You think I'm kidding? Watch this.
What the British people are owed is an explanation. Because a failure on this scale isn't just bad luck. It isn't a global trend or taking your eye off the ball. No, this is a different order of failure.
What?
This happened by design, not accident. Policies were reformed deliberately to liberalise immigration. Brexit was used for that purpose, to turn Britain into a one-nation experiment in open borders.
What?
Global Britain.
That's the Prime Minister saying that.
Yeah.
That. First of all, why is he saying they did that? I mean, we.
He was worked for Five Eyes.
Yeah. Remember when they used to say Global Britain? Watch this.
Remember that slogan?
Global Britain.
That is what they meant. A policy with no support, of which they then pretended wasn't happening.
I can't believe he keeps saying they. He keeps saying they. And then they did pretend it wasn't happening. They did the same thing here in the United States.
Told you racist for saying it's happening, and people I know personally still think it's not happening.
Right, they still think it's not happening.
Evidently, that's the pronoun that they want to choose.
They, yeah.
They.
Yeah. Oh, he's non-binary. That's why he's saying that.
And then they denied it was happening.
Well, the British people...
But by the way, you want to know why this is so crazy? Because this is what he said in 2020.
Right. We need to make the wider case on immigration. We welcome migrants. We don't scapegoat them. Low wages, poor housing, poor public services are not the fault of migrants and people.
Wow. So that's really different than the thing he said later that we just looked at earlier. So in 2020, this is what he was saying in 2020.
We need to make the wider case on immigration. We welcome migrants. We don't scapegoat them. Low wages, poor housing, poor public services are not the fault of migrants and people.
So isn't that amazing? And then this is what he just said this week. This is what he said. Listen to this.
What the British people are owed is an explanation.
Yeah. From fucking you. They're owed an explanation from you.
Does someone have a blackmail tape on him? What is the...
Because a failure on this scale isn't just bad luck. It isn't a global trend or taking your eye off the ball. No, this is a different order of failure. This happened by design, not accident.
Is he
Policies were
anti-Semitic?
reformed deliberately to liberalise immigration. Brexit was used for that purpose.
Brexit was used for that. He's blaming Brexit?
So the point of
The
Brexit
exact
was to not
opposite.
have that.
The exact
Yeah.
opposite. The point of Brexit was the exact opposite of that.
By the way, global... What do they call it? Global England or whatever? What did they just
Yeah,
say? That's like old school colonialism.
Yeah,
from
global
back in the
Britain.
day. Yeah, well, that was
It's
that's in the Last of the Mohicans movie. Make the world Britain.
It's one thing to flood the United States with immigrants. It's one thing to
Right.
flood the United States with immigrants, to try to suppress wages
Mhm.
and create friction between workers and even poorer people and mess with the
Yeah.
culture. It's one thing because the United States was built on immigration. The UK was not.
Yeah,
England
they're
was not.
indigenous.
England was not built on that.
They're the indigenous people. The
Yes.
British.
Do you know what the number one baby name is in
What?
England? Mohammed.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's a good name. I might use that for my baby.
I love that name. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that name.
Call him
But-
Mo. Hey, Mo, what's up? Mo Metzger.
So there he is pretending it was blaming this on Brexit. What else does he say?
To turn Britain into a one-nation experiment in open borders.
A one nation experiment. We're doing that.
Hang on.
And so the
Remember
other
that
nations.
slogan?
Come on. Hold on, let me play this.
In open borders. Global Britain. Remember that slogan? That is what they meant. A policy with no support, of which they then pretended wasn't happening.
And the they that he's talking about is him.
There's still people in prison that he put in prison for tweeting about it.
That's right. If this was a movie, he would not be cast as the good guy. Believe me. He'd be the weak backstabbing traitor who fucks everybody over.
Yeah, he's an MI5 operative that covered up the Jimmy Savile shit.
And so now the cult, your shit liberal cult has sent him out to do damage control for a failed experiment. I don't even really think it's a failed experiment. It's a success
Yeah, no, that was
because
the
it
goal.
ruined the economy just like it was designed to do. It dispossessed the poor right on schedule. It ruined the lives of innocent people who complained about it. It locked fascism into place. And oh yeah, blame Brexit. Don't blame the deep state banking claw that holds the Western world at bay. Blame Brexit,
Yeah,
not the real people doing this.
yeah. And don't you dare say who's doing it, or I'm going to accuse you of Jewish space lasers.
So, as I've said, the Biden administration opened our nation's borders on purpose. This is kind of proof of that. You're simply lying to yourself if you still think otherwise. They have been flying 30,000 illegal immigrants into the country every month. We covered this.
Yeah,
we covered
they're flying
that.
them in.
They're
Never mind
flying
the
them in.
border. They were flying them in with an app. By the way, how's it hard to get your insurance payments, but it's easy to illegally enter the country with a fucking app? How is that possible?
So I
They
just
can't do Medicare. They could do that though. They could fly 30,000 illegals in.
here's this.
Right.
I can't get
we
over
need
it.
to make the wider case on immigration.
We need to make
welcome.
We welcome. This is just 4 years ago. He's saying that. Maybe he misread the teleprompter because he wasn't wearing his glasses.
That's got to be what it is. He got his eyes checked and he realized the numbers were not what he thought. The wider, he's really gaping the case for immigration right there.
Polish housewife says when Keir Starmer says they open the borders by design, he typically omits the fact that he and his party were cheerleaders for open borders. He's currently locking people up for complaining about
Yeah.
the consequences, just as you
Bit
said,
more than a
Kurt.
cheerleader.
This
He's
is
an enforcer.
I can't.
You know who should experiment with open borders? Fucking Israel.
Yeah. It was extremely obvious. It was coordinated, meaning this open border policy. It was extremely obvious it was coordinated, given it hit every Western country at the same time. But the governments are merely the pawns. We know the UN NGOs are facilitators. We know that the WEF and its ilk are what we can see as the conductors. But who was orchestrating?
Mm-hmm.
He's blaming Brexit. I think that is the point he's trying to convey, which is laughable. But the left needs something to blame.
Well, he said Brexit was used.
Open borders policies in Britain came from establishment left and right, just like in the United States. There's nothing to do with Brexit. Of course not. And you know who caught on to this? So this is Viktor Orban, a guy who they want you to think is the next Hitler, just like they said the same thing about Trump here. Why? Because he wants to close the borders in his country. That's a big reason. He's also doing a power grab, but that's what normal politicians do. Laugh my ass off. We already knew this from Twitter. That's why this platform is better than the media. Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, he announced that they were going to do this before they did it in 2019. You want to hear him say it? Watch this.
I do remember how Mr. George Soros published his plan in English.
So George Soros wrote an op-ed where he laid this plan out, and here's Viktor Orban. He's going to quote from it. Watch this.
Oh, that's racist.
I do remember how Mr. George Soros published his plan in English in a Project Syndicate publication. It was done 2015, September 26. And he published a plan. He said that I'm quoting, here are the 6 components of my comprehensive plan. I just quote 2 or 3 points of that. First is, he said very clearly, 2015, that, quoting again, EU has to accept at least 1 million asylum seekers annually.
In 2015, George Soros wrote an editorial where he said Europe has to accept 1 million asylum seekers annually.
Why?
At least. Why? Why? Here's why. Here's why.
That was the first point. Second, he said, adequate financing is critical. And
so he said adequate financing is critical. The reason why, Kurt, I'll jump to the punchline, is because Europeans aren't making enough babies. We just heard Bill Clinton just said that on the campaign trail. We're not making enough babies in America, so we got to import workers. That is all bullshit.
Right. Well,
that is bullshit.
Can't afford it because they don't get paid enough.
That's right.
And they want more money. So that's why we need the new workers to take less money. Because they'll be so grateful.
The real unemployment rate in America is somewhere between 10 and 20%. Do you know during the Great Depression, the unemployment was 25%? So the way so the way they figure out unemployment now artificially lowers the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is probably around 15, maybe even 20%. And so when Bill Clinton and those liars tell you that we need to import workers, that's a lie. What they want is to import cheap labor to suppress the wages of American workers. That's what they mean. And Viktor Orban is onto it because this is a George Soros big idea.
Oh,
and he
that
said,
guy's the best.
So the first part is you got to let in 1 million asylum seekers every year. Then you have to finance it. Well, how do you do that? You borrow. Hey, watch this.
Proposed to issue long-term euro bonds.
Euro bonds. So euro bonds for financing.
Wow.
To finance the migration crisis and the migrants. And how much do you want to give them?
Migration crisis and the migrants. Social and welfare taking.
You know how they were giving credit cards, debit cards, and hotel rooms to migrants all over?
Borrowed for that.
Yeah, you know how they did. This is the plan. This came right from George Soros. Watch this.
When they arrived to the European Union, and another point which is very important for Hungary, which is involving the territory of Hungary directly into this program, he said that, quoting them, safe channels must be established for asylum seekers, starting with getting them from Greece and Italy to their destination countries.
So migration channels have to be established to get them from Greece and Italy. Well, where did they come from?
Human trafficking.
They came from Libya. They came from Iraq. They came from Somalia. All the countries we're doing economic war on.
Yeah. You know, I think that's kind of nice, Jimmy. We're not just blowing them up and destroying their economies. We're bringing them here to ruin the citizens' lives here after we do that because we have a conscience.
Yes. There's more to this. Watch this. So we have to, this is George Soros saying that we have to create migrant safe travel lanes and then bring them to their final destinations in European countries. What?
Oh my God!
Which means to bring them to Hungary and then have them to go to Western. So don't forget that what we are speaking about is not an accidental stories, not a bulk of 10 years of accidental stories. It's a plan which is going on. It was written, it was published, it's known. So we are fighting again an organized gang called Empire of George Soros and NGOs who are just supporting everybody who is transgressing our legal system and our regulation and financing illegal activity against our nation. So this is why the story is not just about migration, but it's about how this European Union is working and how George Soros was able to captive the main positions inside many institutions of European Union, buying out MPs and other leaders, and in order to execute the plan which is written, and it's against all the Christian and nation-based political forces. It's against us. It's about how to change Europe and how to eliminate and push aside all the Christian, conservative, national-based political leaders and voters from the European Union decision-making.
And immediately, the establishment shit liberal media press started calling this guy the next Hitler.
Yeah, I remember.
Because he called out their plan.
Dude, that show I was working on.
I had a shit lib in my DMs who I've known for 30 years who was every stupid fucking thing they say on MSNBC, she just spews out of her mouth. She goes, oh, well, I know you've cozied up to Tucker Carlson and he admires Viktor Orban.
Oh, the worst.
I go,
of the worst.
You mean, Viktor Orban isn't doing a genocide right now. You know who is? The person you're out campaigning for. Tucker Carlson's not doing a genocide. You know who is? The person you told me you're going to do everything you can to get her elected. She's doing a genocide. But somehow Viktor Orban is worse. Tucker Carlson is worse.
I was told to hate them.
Yeah, you were told to hate them. That's called a received opinion. That's called a received opinion. Right,
a valid opinion, the one that's given to you by your betters. When I worked on Who is America, Sasha's show, dude, this is crazy. Because Sasha we kept hammering Assad in these sketches, and like I didn't know shit about it, or like it's not like Saddam Hussein or Osama. You could sink your teeth into that villain. I don't know shit about Assad or care about him. And Sasha's from the old money family. I don't even know how aware he is what he's doing, but they pushed the white helmets.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing about Viktor Orban and how bad it was.
Yes.
And how bad Brexit was. And I didn't know about any of this stuff at the time. And I don't think like I said, I don't know how deliberately his thing is, but he's a rich kid who's a good boy at the end of the day. And if you're a good boy, you're going to take your received opinion and you're going to promulgate it however you can. And
Chomsky also pushed that garbage about Viktor Orban, just like he pushed the garbage about 9/11, just like he pushed the garbage about forced to vote.
JFK.
And he's, so you got to also
pick your battles, Jimmy. You got to pick your battles. Don't tell the truth all the time.
That's right.
That would be insane. Lie sometimes.
So
for power.
So let's watch the rest of this.
This is the migration about, not just about migration. Sorry for.
So he seems like a monster.
So here, watch this. So here is Del Bigtree. He's interviewing a guy named Jeffrey Jakin, and they're going to talk about this. What about how it's happening in the United States, and about how when he was in Switzerland. Well, first of all, my big question is, how dare this foreigner opine about how we haphazardly opened our borders? Let's listen. Here we go.
This is exactly when I was in Switzerland. A lot of people, the international reporters, were coming up to me and saying, your border situation is finally happening to you. We've been having this for 10 years in Europe. It's destroying our economy. It's destroying our families. It's destroying our livelihood. It's destroying our safety in our countries. And now they're doing it to you in America. We actually thought, they were like, we thought you would stand up against it. We thought your ideas of liberty and freedom would stop this. You had a strong border. What happened? You know, it's really amazing. It is an attack. This is an attack on the sovereignty of the United States of America, and everyone that supports it should really be, I think, considered in some way an enemy to the sovereignty of this nation.
And in the European Union, the entryways for this migration were through the water routes up into Italy, up into Spain and Greece. And then from there, the transfer went from everywhere from Ireland, UK, Germany, Sweden, Austria. I mean, throughout the entire European Union, you see reports of these small towns just being swamped by people that are not from that town, and the resources just can't handle it. And, you know, these AAA bonds that George Soros is talking about is not doing it. But here in the United States, we have our version of that. It's the land gap, the Darien gap. And we had Michael Yan, he's the journalist, combat photographer, has done great work there, bringing several people down there to really see what's going on here. And these NGOs are.
So the Darien Gap is in between North and South America and North America that is you cannot traverse. But now they've figured out a way to get people across it.
Maybe you always could, but it's a secret route to
there.
So there it is. There it is. That's called the Darien Gap. And you know who else went down there to talk about this? Brett Weinstein went down there and talked about this. Here we go. Or maybe it was Eric. I'm not sure. But one of them did.
And these NGOs are rampant down there, really helping. And we can see, I mean, it's no secret either in the media. This is NPR. A record 400,000 migrants have crossed the treacherous Darien Gap to reach the U.S.
400,000. So they have NGOs. What that stands for, a non-governmental organization, which gets funded by people like George Soros, who controls the governments.
Well, he's the forward-facing part of it, like that CEO from the health company. Like, first of all,
let's watch the rest of this.
I'm stepping on something. Yeah, sorry.
In Panama, and then another one here in the Darien. Refugees receive help all along the way. But let's go back. So George Soros, it wasn't his brainchild. As early as 2000, if we want to go back that far, in just recent history, we have the UN, United Nations Population Division, and they produced a white paper, and the literal title of this white paper was called Replacement Migration. And so what does it say in there? It says the number of migrants needed to offset declines in the working age populations are significantly larger than those needed to offset total population decline. So they're admitting there's population decline. Whether those large numbers of migrants are within the realm of options open to governments depends to a great extent on the social, economic, and political circumstances of the particular country or region. So if the appetite socially is there, if the financing is there, if the politics is there, green light it. And that's where George Soros comes in, and he says, this is how we make those things palatable. This is how we change the society, open the society, if you will. This is how we finance it. This is how we use politics to do this. And the UN report centered around one of several critical issues, and this is one of them. Policies and programs relating to international migration, in particular replacement migration, and the integration of large numbers of recent migrants and their descendants. So that is the critical issue of how are we going to do this according to the UN.
Yeah.
So this has been in play, and they've been talking about this since 2000. I mean, and you're a traitor for noticing. You're a racist. You're a traitor. So Trump wins, and just days later, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he's going to stop with the immigration madness in Canada. And then Keir Starmer says the same thing weeks later in the UK.
What changed, I wonder?
What changed?
Will we ever get to know what changed behind the scenes that made this happen? I would love to know. It better not be QAnon related, because I'm going to be mad because I never looked into that because I thought it was stupid. But somebody is afraid and changing their story now.
Isn't that amazing? So
Soros is not the head guy. Okay, whatever anybody thinks, he's not. He's not.
And I've showed you how Democrats, for years and years, screamed about illegal immigration the same way Donald Trump does, and then all of a sudden they stopped. At the same time George Soros wrote that editorial. Mm-hmm. Even Bernie Sanders used to say it, and they all stopped. And then they all stopped.
It's like the transition from regular rapidy rap to gangster rap. What happened?
What happened? They all stopped, and then they all turned against Donald Trump, saying what Donald Trump, who was saying exactly what they were saying all those years. They now called him a racist. They're being paid to go against their thing, and that's what being successful and that's what being a real winner is. Cenk Uygur said he'd rather be populous in the woods. Because I noticed it.
Yeah.
And I noticed it. And I used to think the same thing. I thought Tucker Carlson was a racist, talking about the great replacement. But when I was like, no, they used to say the same thing. They would call it demographics are destiny.
Wait, can you go back? Because the UN called it replacement. The fucking UN put it in their report, replacement. So it's not a conspiracy. The people that came up with it called it that.
They called it that. And so then they switched it, and so because all the people I know in Hollywood don't have a fucking original thought in their brain, and they don't have a skeptical fiber of their body for mainstream establishment propaganda. They just completely memory hold that every Democrat talked about demographics as destiny, and they wanted to get in Bill Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders, so we have to stop illegal immigration. We have to make them speak English. They used to say that. We have to make them speak English. We have to deport them. We have to deport them. And then they all stopped. As soon as George Soros wrote that editorial, that all went away.
Okay, keep in mind, George Soros is the George Clooney of op-eds. Do you
Yeah.
understand? George Clooney.
Yeah.
They didn't make the decision on George Clooney's call, but Obama got him to do it. So George Soros is, if they didn't like what he's doing, any of these governments, guess what? He'd be dead. The fact that he's alive means the people in power approve of it. He's the guy they put out there for you to, and then they can say you're anti-Semitic. A guy that helped steal Jew stuff during the Holocaust as a kid, they're going to tell you you're anti-Semitic. A guy who hates Judaism and the nations and all that. A pure Epstein-level globalist.
So, again, this is not to get people to hate immigrants.
I think it is, Jimmy.
This
You're
is
saying great replacement theory.
This is to let you know that there's a higher game being played. So I've often said in my act, if you find yourself being angry at someone lower on the economic ladder than you, pretty good chance we're all being manipulated by someone higher on the economic ladder.
Talk.
And that's exactly what this segment reveals.
I'm not going to do conspiracies.
That's exactly what this has been forced on you. The immigrants, they've wrecked their economy. You think people from Haiti want to move to another country? Nobody wants to leave their home country and move to another country because the reason what we do is we make them so desperate and poor and wreck their economy, overthrow their governments, like we do all over the world, like we did in Libya, like we did in Somalia, like we did in Sudan, like we did in Iran, like we did in Iraq, like we're trying to do right now in Syria, like we did in Venezuela, in Haiti. This is the game. And J.D. Vance won't tell you that game. I don't know why. Why won't he tell you that game? Because that's being funded by his funders. He'll talk about the Haitian immigrants in a way that helps him politically, but he won't tell you why they're there. He won't tell you what happened. He'll talk about the Venezuelan immigrants and the gangs that came from South America, but he won't tell you how they got here or why they're desperate. He won't tell you because he'd be telling on the funders. So that's what we need to keep in mind. And we need to demand a border. Even the most lefty liberal congressman in my life, Dennis Kucinich, he was so left that the Democrats gerrymandered him out of his own district so they could get rid of him. He says we gotta secure the border. We have to shut it down and secure the border. If you don't have a border, you don't have a country, which is exactly what Donald Trump says. So this is a game being played on us, and then they use it to divide us. And they're not just doing it in the United States. Just like Del Bigtree said, they've been doing this for 10 years in Europe. 10 years. The number one name in England for babies, Muhammad. Not that love that name, but that gives you an example of the kind of immigration that's been happening, that they've been flooding the country with. And if you notice it, you're called a racist. If you notice this and call this out, well, now the Prime Minister of the UK is calling it out. And he's pretending like he didn't have anything to do with it. Now that it's already done, Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com.